AI is transforming our lives. It's reshaping industries, economies, every aspect of our daily life. Minister Nzimande, I would like to start with you because we were supposed to navigate the different approaches and regulations around the world. But like 2 days ago, the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, was at the Paris AI Summit, and he warned the EU regarding heavy regulations, and he said this might kill the AI. And I would like to ask you about the different approaches that are being taken by different countries. Some of them are very strict, while the others are a bit more like easygoing with AI. Definitely we have calculations like dominance, speed, and stuff. How do you view those strategies?
I think this issue is a very important one. To a large extent, the earlier panel was actually dealing with it. I think that my entry point, firstly, would be to say that we do need an overarching global framework for regulation. There is no doubt that, for reasons that I will say, that we do need some regulations, because for AI, it's very important for transparency, for safety, for human rights, and a whole range of things that can be negatively affected. That is why for us as South Africa, the process that is led by UNESCO now on ethics of AI, it's very important that all countries participate in that, in shaping that, and will provide an overarching framework. I see no reason why, given the importance of AI, why we can't have rules like the WTO, for instance. You also have got other global rules on how to play the game and all that. So it's very important, which then also helps to guide countries to have regulations that are in line with their own needs. There's obvious, AI is such a powerful tool. At the opening, minister in the cabinet of UAE made very interesting predictions, as it were, as to where we are likely to be in future. Also, by the way, technology can become a new form of recolonizing less developed countries, with more developed countries being able to move far ahead and widening the inequality gap, which is one major threat that we actually face. Of course, I don't want to look only at that side. Regulation, as the previous speakers were saying, must not also stifle innovation. In South Africa, we are still early days because we as yet do not have existing regulations specifically for AI. We've got other laws like protection of private information. We've got other laws that are based on guiding how information is used. So they indirectly affect what AI could do and also regulation. But we do need specific AI regulations. It's not going to, by the way, just as the last point maybe I should make, it's not going to affect only, we are not going to have one overarching regulatory authority for AI and say that you are done. Because it touches a whole lot of things. In South Africa, for instance, we've got a regulatory authority for broadcasting. They, in one way or the other, have got to have something to do with AI, the use of AI in society generally and so on. So the issue of multiple instruments, but with coordination, is also going to help. Because those regulatory bodies may also use to counter-check each other, as it were. So all those are things, and it's a very important subject that this World Governance Summit is actually developing. If I get another chance, I'll come into what we are doing in South Africa.
I would love to hear that. But
yes.
We'll see with Dr. Maqsoud from a human rights perspective. I'm not sure if you are overestimating or underestimating the risks. From a small basic chatbot to self-driving cars to the defense industry, how would you balance the innovation with protecting basic human rights? Now, we feel like science fiction movies are so close to reality. the Minority Report, for example, when we hear like AI would be able to, or the algorithm will be able to predict our behavior in the future and take part in judicial, for example, decisions. How are we able to protect the basic human rights, like such as freedom of expression?
Allow me to approach your question by this great quote of the Czech novelist Kafka. He says the following: I am a cage in search of a bird. And this is the dilemma of AI today. It's a big cage in search of its soul, meaning the necessity of humanizing every aspect of the AI. We cannot approach technology without human dignity, without understanding there's a human element and the different challenges that comes with it, but also the wonderful opportunities that we need to invest in, that we can capitalize on, but also moving forward. So this is not to be against AI. I think it's actually, on the contrary, it is promoting AI, but from a humanistic perspective.
So I will give you an example. Self-driving cars in the future. If it gets into a car crash, who's responsible for this? Who's going to take account?
Before even discussing who is responsible for all of this, I think there's a level of depth that is required to think about it. We cannot ignore the role of ethics and the philosophy behind it as well to determine who is actually responsible, who is in charge. We cannot ignore the level of depth that is requiring in terms of the critical thinking needed behind the applications of AI. There's always a big commercial value, and there's always an advancement when it comes to the different applications and the products. But at the end of the day, the real question remains, what does AI play in our role, and what kind of dilemmas we can debate? And therefore, if we don't have these deep and serious debates on the ethical components, we will be missing the point of the AI. At the same time, building on the issue and the need of regulation, as His Excellency alluded to, that regulation needs a different level of thinking altogether, in the sense how AI, when it's being conducted, takes into consideration issues of privacy, data protection, who actually manages this data, what it actually does with it, and then how we can use that in the right and proper way. And then there are issues related to digital poverty. Not all countries in the world, not all people on the planet have the same equality when it comes to the access to the internet or to the modern technologies, where they still struggle with different kinds of challenges. And therefore, while we are enthusiastic about the AI, I think it's always important to have a moment of deep reflection and thinking where AI is taking us.
Minister Nzimande, you would like to share with us how South Africa is shaping its own AI regulation in this regard?
Well, as I have said, we do not as yet have AI-specific regulation. It doesn't mean we are not aware. In fact, our Department of Communications and Digital Technology is leading that process at the moment. You know, that we must develop regulations specifically for AI. Of course, we are listening carefully here to what the UAE is doing, to what other countries are doing, because that's the beauty of this platform. You know, you are able to listen and get some ideas about what other countries are doing. But here is something else that we've done. We've established a center for research into artificial intelligence, which is looking at a whole range of these issues, you know, regulation, digital infrastructure that is required, skills development that is required, you know. By the way, even in training people in this broad area of AI, you need also to ensure that people also, you try to imbue certain values about protection of private information, you know, around the potential dangers of AI and so on. And one of the research issues that we are doing with one of our premier universities, Wits University, is on social dimensions of the digital economy, because we think that is a very crucial area that sometimes we don't pay adequate attention to. How are these new technologies affecting society? How are even these new technologies affecting families? I mean, I always make this example. that it's not unusual to get into a household and find that the mother and father are sitting opening the TV, but they are on their cell phones and they are not talking to each other. And the children are in the bedrooms watching Netflix or whatever else. So there is hardly any communication in that family. What are some of the implications for that in terms of the kinds of families we are wanting to build and the kind of society? We're also looking research into the effects of AI on labor markets, because that's going to have a huge implications. What type of skilled people do we need? What kinds of jobs are likely to disappear? What new jobs are going to come? What implications does that have for education? This is what this research also is looking into in terms of AI and all that. So those are some of the dimensions that we're actually looking at. But most importantly, it's very important, because I mustn't behave as if I'm saying AI is not important. We must support it. It's got a lot of potential. We must try and minimize the negatives. We need also to be investing into research and development on an ongoing basis if we are to actually innovate and be able to do it. It's even more important for developing countries, because the dangers that also we have is that good things that are happening, but then less developed countries merely become consumers of technologies that are developed somewhere else. And the danger of that is that we don't contextualize. AI will have to be contextual. It can't just generally be the same everywhere. UAE has got its own specific features as a country, as a society, different from South Africa. What are even the priorities that AI should actually be addressing? So we are backing this up more than anything else with research. We've got a center, and it's got hubs, this Center for Research, by the way. We are looking at different aspects of the economy, the automotive sector, AI in the automotive sector. AI in energy, it's a big thing for us because we've got challenges in terms of energy, consistent energy supply, although we are overcoming that, and so on. So, and the last point I would also like to make is that part of regulation will also have to deal with access. It's very unfortunate that in the debate in American politics today, we want to do away with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a big issue for South Africa, where we come from. You know, of centuries of colonialism and decades of apartheid. Majority of South Africans do not even have access to a basic computer, when in fact we are talking about a mouse. Some kids from the rural areas think we are talking about a rat, when a mouse today means something else in the modern technology. So we need also to ensure that part of the regulation. I was glad to hear the lady from who was sitting here from Bahrain, you know, talking about some of the things that they are actually doing, because what we need to be doing also, regulation must also promote, regulators must also promote access, must also promote equity. Women's participation is a big issue, you know, in the African continent, in our country as well, that technologies must not only just be for males. The women must also be able to actively participate. And in some countries, that's taken for granted. In other countries, it's actually not the case. So regulators must also ensure that in developing AI, some of these things are factored into that. So these are some of the things that we are doing in South Africa.
Dr. Maqsoud, speaking of society, while we are concerned about the danger of AI, and the threat, we also neglect that we are dangerous, because we don't know what we are feeding those machines with our human behavior, our language, etc. How would we be able to regulate this issue? Some ideas are emerging, such as quotas, such as taxes, AI taxes, for example. How can we protect employees also in the future?
Well, there are three important aspects in this debate and ongoing discussion. The first component, that we should not be fearing AI as it's going to replace jobs. given that AI initially was meant to be advance our economy, advance our societies, be able to move forward with that. So the real question is what kind of gaps we need to identify, what kind of preparation and training we need to put in there, and how our current laws and regulations need to be developed to a certain degree where we protect the rights of the workers, of the employees, and ensure that such issues and challenges don't take place. The second important insight is AI is by default multidisciplinary. So we can't just have it from a technological perspective. Cognitive sciences have a role, economy has a role, social sciences has a role, philosophy has a role in debating and discussing, but also putting the regulations that are necessary in the right direction. The third and the final insight is the following. We as humans, Homo sapiens, we are not supposed to be afraid of our own innovation because we are the creator to begin with. And instead of looking at that from a fearful perspective, we need to be, by design, more deliberate, more specific, and more understanding of the implications of the system and how it actually goes with it. Frankly speaking, being a psychologist myself, I understand the importance of the human processes when it comes to shaping societies. And as we are celebrating in the UAE in 2025, the Year of Community, this is even a more important issue where we can use the AI to advance our communities, our societies. How we can, for example, tackle hate speech, how we can look into issues of racism, discrimination, and how we can let AI be that power to help us to create better societies, advance coexistence, tolerance, and social cohesion, in which AI becomes actually on the good side, on the right side, not something to be feared. At the end of the day, the future is what we want it to be, and as humans, what kind of future we are hoping to have.
By the way, I'm also a psychologist by training.
Oh.
And that I want to close by this, that being a psychologist, my biggest concern and fear sometimes, maybe I'm sharing this publicly now, is whether this machine-based intelligence may one day overtake human intelligence. Because if that happens, then we may lose control. We may innovate in such a way that we innovate our own human intelligence out of existence. That's one of the things also that we need to, I don't believe it will happen.
Why not?
But it's what, I don't know. I mean, the minister in the cabinet, when he opened, he actually said, in future, these machines will be cleverer than us, so what we call the IQ of the human beings may be less than that. So those are some of the things that we must watch, that these machines do not turn against us also, because you can't entirely control them. Once they've got better intelligence than us, then it may not be very easy to actually control them. It's just an issue out of curiosity and other things that I think also as humans, since we have raised that, an important issue we have to grapple with.
Definitely, that's what we call the singularity moment as well, that I hope we don't reach that. Doctor, would you like to have a final message before we conclude?
Well, the great writer, the German writer Goethe once said, "Knowing is not enough, we must apply, and willing is not enough, we must do." Therefore, it's time to transition from debating ethics and the need for human rights within the regulation and policies of AI to action.